the Health Secretary has announced tough new restrictions for millions of people living in parts of northern England amid a rise in cases of coronavirus. Matt Hancock says that from midnight tonight, people living in Greater Manchester and parts of East Lancashire and West Yorkshire will be banned from going to other people's houses. They cannot meet inside or in private gardens. He says the sudden move is part of immediate action to keep people safe. The details are still emerging, but it appears that shops, pubs and restaurants in the affected areas can remain open. Sophie Hutchinson has the very latest.
Oldham, where cases of coronavirus have more than tripled in the past week. People here and now right across Greater Manchester will be banned from visiting each other indoors as part of new restrictions to curb the sudden surge in cases. The same measures will apply to Blackburn with Darwin and in other parts of East Lancashire and in some areas in West Yorkshire. The Health Secretary said the decision had been reached after high-level meetings with local officials today.
We take this action with a heavy heart, but unfortunately it's necessary because we've seen that households meeting up and a lack of social distancing is one of the causes of this rising rate of coronavirus, and we'll do whatever is necessary to keep the country safe.
A spike in coronavirus cases in places like Trafford in Greater Manchester has led to tonight's decision. Initially, the virus seemed to hit teenagers there, according to public health officials. Now it's adults, some with young families, and it's in the better off areas.
It's a leafy suburb, so we've got lots of professional families, lots of teachers, social workers, doctors, nurses. It's a very, very desirable area to live. And the areas that we're seeing these positive cases in are in these households.
Let's get back to where we used.
Testing is free, quick and vital to stop.
The government's new ad campaign, a push to get more people tested. Figures suggest 2/3 of infected people are still being missed. But there is better news in Leicester, which has seen a significant drop in infections. After a month of local lockdown, many will be wondering when restrictions might be eased. But despite falls in cases, there were still 200 new infections this week, raising questions about the safety of the city. Sophie Hutchinson, BBC News.
Well, our correspondent Judith Moritz joins us now from Manchester. And this has all been announced in the past hour. It is going to come as a big shock to very many people.
Yes, it is. I think it's the suddenness of the announcement, Sophie, which is such a shock. The data has been perhaps pointing this way for some time. The majority of those places on the list of the areas most affected by the coronavirus at the moment are in the north of England. But we're now talking about greater restrictions across a large part of the north. Greater Manchester, all of its 10 boroughs from here in Stockport, where I am, to Bolton, Rochdale, and all around this conurbation, across in Lancashire, Blackburn, also Burnley, Hyndburn, Pendle and Rossendale, and then over the Pennines in West Yorkshire, in Bradford and in Kirklees and Calderdale, the areas around Huddersfield and Halifax. So this is a sudden announcement tonight. People will find it hard to deal with, I think, not least because many of these areas are areas with significant Muslim community populations. They are, of course, looking to celebrate Eid tomorrow, and these restrictions come in from midnight tonight. They're not, these restrictions, as strict as what we saw in Leicester recently, but they do cover a much greater area. So it's the number of people affected by it. I think the other thing to say to you is that it's been a decision taken by central government, but it has been welcomed by people here, by leaders here, and taken in conjunction with them. And Andy Burnham tonight, who's the Mayor of Greater Manchester, has said, A, that he welcomes it, and B, in fact, that he's asked all of the residents who come within his area in Greater Manchester, both young and old alike, to abide by these new restrictions.
Judith Moritz with the latest from Manchester. Thank you. And we can talk to our political correspondent, Chris Mason, who is in Westminster. It's drastic action. What more detail can you tell us?
Yeah, we were told, weren't we, that there was always the possibility that the brakes would be slammed on as part of this gradual unlocking of the country. Well, here it is, the biggest single example of it yet, affecting millions of people with barely a couple of hours' notice until these new rules kick in at midnight. What I'm told this evening is that Matt Hancock, the Health Secretary for England, chaired what is known as the Gold Committee. That's the most senior representatives, officials and politicians in all of the English regions. They came to the conclusion this afternoon, having looked at the data, that they had to act immediately. Quite striking in his interview tonight was that Matt Hancock 3 times rebuked some people in these affected regions for breaking social distancing regulations, and he said for that reason that was why this had to be done, and it had to be done as quickly as possible. Wouldn't surprise me if we were to hear from the Prime Minister tomorrow about the potential this could have around the rest of England if there isn't a willingness for people to follow the rules. The emphasis from government for the last couple of days now, quite strikingly, has been one of caution. It's only a fortnight ago the Prime Minister was talking about the potential for things to be back towards normality by Christmas. We're not hearing that language now. It is caution every step of the way. Earlier today we heard of a second European country being added to the list of those where returning Britons will have to quarantine. A tiddler compared with Spain, hearing from Luxembourg, just 120,000 Britons visit there each year. But again, a sense that the government is willing to, as I say, slam things into reverse. This virus has robbed us, hasn't it, of many things. It continues to rob us of any sense of certainty.
Chris Mason with the latest on that breaking story. Thank you.